The haunting of the Conjuring house. It was a crisp autumn evening when the Perron family moved into the secluded, centuries-old farmhouse in the woods of Harrisville. They didn't know much about the house's dark history, only that it had been around since the 18th century. The sprawling, creaky floors and drafty rooms had a certain charm, at least at first, but soon the charm wore off and the terror set in. It started with small things, doors creaking open on their own, cold drafts that cut through even the warmest rooms, and strange knocking sounds in the dead of night. Carolyn Perron, the mother, dismissed it as the house settling. After all, it was over 200 years old. But her children felt differently. They started whispering about seeing strange figures in the corners of their rooms, shadows that didn't seem to belong to anything, whispers in languages they didn't understand. One night, the youngest daughter, Cindy, woke up to the sound of soft humming. It was coming from inside her closet. She opened her eyes, terrified but frozen in place. The door slowly creaked open, revealing an impossibly dark space inside. The humming grew louder, and as she stared into the pitch-black void, she saw two glowing eyes staring back at her. She screamed. Carolyn rushed into the room, but by the time she arrived, the closet was empty. Cindy, shaking and pale, insisted she had seen something. A woman dressed in tattered old clothes with a twisted, wicked smile. The activity in the house grew worse with each passing day. The family would hear disembodied footsteps running up and down the stairs at night. The smell of rotting flesh would waft through the halls without explanation. Lights would flicker, and objects would move on their own. One night, Carolyn woke up with deep scratches across her back, as if something had clawed at her while she slept. In desperation, the Perrons contacted the famous paranormal investigators, Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens had heard of the house's dark past, a history that involved multiple deaths, suicides, and even accusations of witchcraft. Lorraine, a clairvoyant, immediately felt the overwhelming presence of a dark entity as soon as she entered the house. It was angry, malevolent. The Warrens began their investigation and soon uncovered the truth. The land had once belonged to a woman named Bathsheba Sherman, who was rumored to have been a witch. Legend had it that Bathsheba had sacrificed her own infant to the devil and cursed anyone who tried to live on her land. She had hanged herself in the attic, but her spirit, filled with rage and hatred, lingered on the property, tormenting anyone who dared step foot on it. The most terrifying moment came when the Warrens attempted to communicate with the entity through a séance. As they connected with the spirit world, something powerful and evil latched onto Carolyn. Her body stiffened, and her eyes rolled back into her head. She began speaking in a low, guttural voice that was not her own, shouting obscenities in a language no one recognized. The room grew unbearably cold, and the lights flickered violently. Lorraine screamed for Ed to stop the séance, but before he could, Carolyn's body lifted off the ground and slammed against the wall with a bone-crunching force. When she finally collapsed to the floor, bruised and bleeding, the room fell silent. Whatever had possessed her was gone, at least for the moment. The Warrens warned the Perrons that the house was cursed, that the spirit of Bathsheba would never rest. Despite their efforts to cleanse the house, the dark presence remained. The Perrons lived in the house for 10 more years, constantly tormented by the spirits within. The entity seemed particularly fixated on Carolyn, who often felt herself being watched or touched by unseen hands. By the time the family moved out, they were forever scarred by their time in that haunted place. To this day, the Conjuring house remains a hotbed of paranormal activity. Visitors report hearing ghostly whispers, seeing shadowy figures, and feeling an overwhelming sense of dread the moment they step onto the property. Bathsheba's curse lingers, and those brave enough to stay the night often find themselves face to face with the same terrifying spirits that once tormented the Perron family. The house may look like just another old farmhouse, but behind its weathered walls, something evil stirs, waiting for its next victim.